Ralph, we're back from Fanatics Fest. Missed you, buddy. Wish that we could have had you along, but it's just one of those weekends where the wife and I had to get away. Needed a few minutes to ourselves.
Okay.
You get the idea. Friends, we have got the full Fanatics Fest 2025 recap. I'm going to dive into a variety of things. I've got so many thoughts on this show. Man, I did not go last year. This was my first experience, and it was wild. I mean, so many different things. I'm still trying to process all of it. Before I dive in, don't forget to get your discount first-time submitter at PSA. $25 off your first submission. SCD25 code at the shipping and billing screen. If you or a friend want to save $25, there you go. There's a code. Also, don't forget your boys got 10% off your SlabMags orders. I'm one of the only ones left on the internet that's got a working SlabMags code at SportsCardDad at checkout. Take 10% off of that order. It's the best way to display cards and protect the surface with UV protection. JustCollect.com. You got a collection to sell. You don't know where to go with it. Head on over to JustCollect.com. Easy appraisal form there, whether it's vintage or modern. Leighton Sheldon and the crew will help you out. Make sure that you get what you need for your collection at JustCollect.com. All right, so let me set the stage here going up to New York City. So my wife and I really treated this as kind of more of a date weekend away. When I first met my wife 16 years ago or so, she was living in Midtown. So we went to actually kind of our old spots. There's a pizza place called Vezzo that's there that's absolutely insane. It's just about right across the street from her old building. So we did kind of like a little nostalgia tour where we did the pizza thing. We went by her old building and did the sites, kind of walked around some of our old spots. And it's wild to see how many businesses have turned over, of course, since the pandemic and all that. We've been back since to New York City, but it's always interesting to see how the city has changed just in a year or 2 years, 3 years. And so we like to walk the city. So a lot of this trip was kind of more just hanging out. And then we wrapped in Fanatics Fest there on Saturday. So we were not there Friday, weren't there Sunday. We were just there on Saturday. We stayed in the Grayson Hotel, just about a 20-minute walk down to Javits Center, which is nothing. Again, we like to walk the city and just kind of see the sights and people watch and all that. So it took about 20 minutes walk down to the Javits Center. All right, walking up. This is the Javits Center. It's all glass. Beast of a building. We're seeing the Fanatics Fest signage. Cars everywhere. Oh, I got to make this light. Got to make the light. We bought the $70 ticket, so 2 tickets, $70 each. I thought that it was actually really good value. I will go into why I think that, but $140 to get in there. It was about a 40-minute wait, so we got there at 10 a.m. They had it all queued up, and it took about 45 minutes to go ahead and get our badge and all that stuff. So it's like a theme park line wait at the water park or something. About 40 minutes to get on the ride, 45 minutes, and then we were in there at about 10:45. So a little bit of a wait, but it wasn't too bad though. As you've probably seen and heard from some of the other vlogs and other people talking about this show, this is a combination of a card collectibles show and just a fan fest. It's a fan festival, and they really did a good job, in my opinion, of striking a balance between these two things. Now, the one thing that really kind of stood out to me is that the actual card show itself, I had very little expectations for it because last year I heard, you got a couple hundred tables that are set up. It was a little slow over there. Some dealers said they did really well. Some dealers didn't go back. But when I was there Saturday at about 11 a.m., it was slammed. It was absolutely slammed over there on the collectible side, the kind of the collector zone, I think is what they called it. Now, what was interesting is parts of the show that were not slammed were the repack buying stations. Or just the buying stations in general, I thought. When I was there, now granted, maybe they did really well when I wasn't there, but as I was walking around, I was trying to take some pictures of different things. The Hit Parade booth, for example, at the National, there's a line like a mile long. People either trying to buy repacks or sell slabs to get more, like the whole repack machine is cooking at the National. I didn't really see that here. I didn't see the actual buying stations being busy. But that made sense to me because you have most of the people that are coming in there to do all the different activations and to see the athletes. They're not bringing a Pelican case in. There wasn't nearly as many Pelican cases, not really many at all at this event compared to the National. And we'll talk kind of about the National versus this show because there's always talk about that. But also another thing I want to note, given how many people were there, and it was a ton of people, it was tens of thousands for sure. No issues getting into the bathroom. There wasn't some huge long lines. There was concessions everywhere inside. I grabbed a couple of Mick Ultras while I was there. I didn't have to wait in line. I just walked up. There's a huge bar there kind of in the corner, but there was food everywhere. You could walk outside, walk 10 feet. And then of course you've got like the hot dog, the chicken and rice stands that are right out front. But then all you have to do is just keep on walking a little bit further. There's restaurants everywhere. So if we're just talking about location and access to restrooms and food and all that sort of a thing, places to sit down, this place is a lot different than what you would find at the National. Unless at the National, if you're staying at the hotels that are just right across the street in Chicago and Rosemont, those hotels that are right across the street from the convention center, then you can kind of go rest up and that sort of a thing. Otherwise, you're having a cab out or you're having to walk somewhere, which is fine. But this was different in that way. Logistically, I thought it was set up really well to be able to handle the crowds. I did meet up with Jeff Wilson just to talk with him about, hey, how does this compare to last year and that sort of thing. He did show me he's got some custom top shoes that he had made. I also had ordered a card from him that he had showed on one of kind of his trade night videos on the Sports Card Investor channel. It's a Breeze 2008 refractor numbered out of 199. It's a PSA 10. There's only about a dozen of these, 10 or 12 of these in PSA 10. I did get this on Friday before I head out, and so I did let him know that I was not going to leave a 1-star review for Cards HQ. I did receive the card, and it was in good shape. He was telling me that it's a lot busier, and I was asking him, look, is there ever a time where Fanatics Fest is 1,000 tables and it's a much larger card show? Do they expand the card show part? He did not think that that was going to be the case, and I kind of agree if I'm looking at the space there, and I guess I just don't know how much extra space they can expand the thing out. It's massive in there. They, of course, run New York Comic Con. Do they want to add, another couple hundred tables? Or would you want to have more sponsor type stuff that's more geared towards the fan part of the Fan Fest, not necessarily card collectors? I'm not really sure. To be honest, I thought it would be cool just to keep on adding more fan stuff as opposed to more card tables, because I thought it was a really strong card show for what it was. I think it was maybe like 200 or 300 tables, very busy. It was not a dollar box show, which there's nothing wrong with that, but I also know that does draw in a lot of the card collectors, the quarter boxes, dollar boxes, and all that sort of thing. This was more of a mid-end show, mid to high-end. There was a lot of tables. Really, if I'm looking at most tables, it was like $100 to $2,000 as far as I'm just looking at their showcases. And then you had some wicked showcases. I mean, people that had like, a dozen 86 Fleer Jordans, and they had, SP Brady's and Brady autos and Jordan autos and LeBron autos and all sorts of crazy cases full of really awesome stuff. And I think part of that is what I'm going to talk about next. And it's a shifting hobby. And I'll explain what I saw, and then we can kind of like talk about how does that pertain to the overall hobby, how you hobby and I do, and what we see at the National as an example. The National, I feel like, has low-end, mid-end, high-end. It's a card mecca. It's got everything. If you're there for low-end cards, it's there. Mid-end, high-end, it's all there at the National. It is a pure Disneyland of card shows, 100%. But when I look at this show, when I look at the Fan Fest and what was happening, when you just take it all in, there was a few things that were actually pretty wild and I thought were really cool, but I'm thinking like, my God, this is not anything that we've ever really seen at this level before. I'll use an example. So Roth Cards, high-end dealer, and he's also a huge Commanders fan, Washington Commanders fan. He has a Jaden Daniels 1/1 black finite. I think it's a PSA 9 or PSA 10, or no, it's a BGS 9.5 or whatever. The grade doesn't really matter. It's a Jaden Daniels 1/1 black finite. It's probably his best card, Jaden Daniels. Well, Roth Cards is on like around this stage. The owner of the Commanders is there. Jaden Daniels is there on the stage, and Michael Rubin is there. Really, the most powerful guy in collectibles outside of Nat Turner. They're all on the stage, and I think it was staged to some degree. I assume that they knew that Roth was there with that card. Maybe they didn't. I don't really know. Doesn't really matter. But Roth basically gets to the front of the line, says, I have Jaden Daniels' best card here. Well, the owner of the Commanders makes an offer and essentially buys that card for $500,000 right there live at the show. And also in return, Roth gets a signed Jaden Daniels jersey and then takes a photo op, like meets Jaden Daniels. This is not a typical card collector experience or card dealer experience or anything like that. Speaking of card dealers, you have Wembanyama came up and bought like a 77 Star Wars auto card. How many times do card dealers have the opportunity for an athlete of that caliber? Because we're not talking nothing against retired players and all that sort of a thing. I love Ryan Sandberg, Lenny Dykstra, love these guys. A lot of those guys are on kind of the show circuit. They're retired and they're going around meeting fans and they're signing autographs. But they're available. They're available to you at many different card shows. They kind of, Pete Rose was so great, but he would go around to, he signed everything under the sun. He would go to all these shows. It was accessible. You know, Victor Wembanyama is not accessible. He is a new athlete on the scene. You know, Tom Brady. You know, last year's Fanatics Fest, there was a lot of Topps reels. I think I took a copy of the reel and made it into a video, part of a video. Kevin DeCaptain, you know, he met Tom Brady, came and bought cards from him. This guy literally like left his job. I believe he was teaching to buy, sell, trade cards full time, and Tom Brady cards were really kind of the catalyst for that. This guy met Tom Brady, talked to Tom Brady, sold cards to Tom Brady, shook his hand. Like, he'll never forget that experience. That's everything for a sports fan, for a card collector. And I'm not saying it's all about the you know, meeting the celebrity and that sort of a thing. I'm not a person that necessarily like needs to meet my heroes and that sort of thing. I can collect their cards and so forth, but it's just access, unprecedented access that we have never seen before. You know, I'm looking around that show, there's a lot of teenagers. There was moms that were running around. Like James Harden was doing one of these events there where they had fans competing with pro athletes for, you know, to win a Ferrari and to win prizes and all that sort of a thing. I watched a mom literally like running, like her kid was running behind her, like running after James Harden with a camera. And then there was a lot of teenagers there. You know, you're 16, 17, 18, you're from New York, and you're like, holy crap, like LeBron James going to be here. You know, like there was a lot of local regional people I could tell that came to that show, and they were like blown away that there was all these, you know, they were chasing around, you know, athletes. The WWE is a lot bigger than I ever thought that it was. You know, I watched WWF, you know, going back in time when I was a kid. And I know WWE has been popular for a long time. That's not something that's brand new. But again, they had a stage that you could get pretty close to it. The access was there, and there would be a wrestler walk out and like yell at the crowd, and there's people just running over with it. It was just like a sea of cameras trying to take pictures of these wrestlers coming out to pump everybody up. I mean, it was something unlike that I've ever really seen before. So you had a really cool combination of the card show with the access to the athletes, because you could literally just be standing anywhere in the show, and then there would be kind of an entourage that would walk by you, and there's Libby Dunn, or there's, you know, Tom Brady, or whoever it is. And that's just something that you don't really experience. If I go to a card show, or if I go to the National, unless you've got kind of the, you know, the behind the scenes access, media access type stuff, you know, you're not going to be able to really, unless you buy a photo op, you can shake their hand and stuff. You're not going to get any of that behind the scenes type stuff with the athletes. I had that when I went to Chantilly. I had a media pass where I went behind the scenes, went back behind the curtain, and there's Emmitt Smith back there. I got to meet some of these guys, but for the most part, you don't have that sort of access. And even if you do, it's a lot of the retired players. Travis Hunter walked right in front of me. Travis Hunter, and that would have been cool. I was thinking, man, my youngest son would have really freaked out if he was there, you know, for that moment. And that we were talking about that, my wife and I, maybe we do bring my youngest next year. So all sorts of different installations that were set up. They had like the dunk tank. I think Kevin Hart does a show where it's like the cold plunge show where he gets into like the ice bath and an athlete does, and he talks to them. There's some sort of a show that they do. They actually set that thing up, that whole thing where they've got these different ice baths on a stage. It was called the Coldest Balls stage or something like that. And Tom Brady did it. Actually, my wife was going to the restroom, and the restroom was right next to the stage, and she got a picture of Tom Brady like right as he was like taking his shirt off to get into the cold plunge. So it's not as if this was like 1,000 miles away, you know, 100 yards away where they were doing this and it was all blocked off. I mean, it was like right there to where you had access to it. And Victor Wembanyama did it, and a bunch of these other guys did it too. So the fan installations were insane. The athlete, the celebrity access, to be honest with you, they had influencers there. I didn't know who any of them were. I knew Logan Paul, but outside of that, you know, the YouTubers, I'm not talking about the card people. I'm talking about just like regular YouTubers that were there. I don't know who the hell any of them are. But again, I was not necessarily the target demographic for this show. And that's what I wanted to kind of get into next in this video is this to me was more focused around 30 and under. You know, when I look at the age group, because it's the access to the athletes, it's a big focus on the money part about, you know, you can pull a big card, you can sell a big card. Hey, if you pull that big card, you might be able to sell it to the owner of the Commanders, and you might be able to take a picture with Jaden Daniels. I mean, that's basically what happened here. You know, Roth cards, I don't know if he actually pulled it or if he bought it or whatever, but he gained access to this huge card, and at Fanatics Fest was able to literally sell it to the owner of the team. That's insane. You wouldn't think of that. Going back 2 years, 5 years, 10 years in this hobby, that was absolutely unheard of. But what I've seen from Topps and Fanatics in their marketing machine is they are focused on a younger crowd. And that's just really the truth, the reality. I've always wondered, like, why the hell does this new kind of Topps marketing regime, why don't they market their iconic brands? How come they don't wrap in 52 Topps baseball into a commercial and maybe tie that in with some of their newer stuff? And they just don't do that. They really focus heavily on ultra modern, but mainly ultra modern. And I understand they're trying to sell ultra modern products, so I get it. But this is an iconic brand in our hobby. This is a huge, huge brand in our hobby. This is like Disney in our hobby is Topps. Topps is a huge brand name in our hobby. They don't really use the historical part, to do the marketing. You have Michael Rubin was on stage counting out the money. Which guy? Who was it? There was a guy. There was either a celebrity or an athlete. I can't remember which one it was. I lost track because they kept on doing these different kind of marketing deals where somebody bought a gold refractor LeBron. I believe it was 2003 gold refractor for $250,000. A fan sold it. And I can't remember who bought it, but it was an athlete or it was a celebrity. And Michael Rubin's on a stage counting out money.
We got a deal. We got a deal. Yeah. Tom, I think you should literally put the 250 in the bag for him right now. Go ahead. Can you do it, please? Hold the bag. I'll be your assistant. He's going to need armed security to get out of cash right now. 3. Remember, we're still in New York. Just 5. And put it in the bag.
But again, it was all about, there was a lot of focus around big money. And also having the fans selling the cards, it was, obviously showcasing them. It gave the fan like, oh my God, I'm having this, I'm like up here with Michael Rubin, I'm selling this card to a celebrity. But they're pushing that out as, cool factor, for younger people. But I think it's going to draw a lot of people in, frankly. I think people are going to think that that's really cool. I've talked about this before, the rise of sports betting in our society. And they also had a big installation for, I think it's Fanatics Bets or kind of the sports betting stuff. And they did have they had throw a football in the hole and, they have this different, net set up and you win a prize. It's exactly what we've been talking about. They'll have it at the National too. Less probably on the sports betting, more on just kind of the breaking and the repacks and the gambling products. But there's also, that was all wrapped in there as well.
You got Trey Young right there. That's good. That's Trey. Bob Carrington. Ja'Cory Walker. Oh, blue scope, Draymond Green. Draymond's in the building today too, Draymond. To 249.
And while I'm not a sports bettor, my younger brothers are. My oldest son is like, oh, Dad, I did a parlay the other day. It was only $5. I'm like, yeah, it needs to be $5 or less. $1. Do the $1 parlay. But that is the norm now. That is society. Gambling is now a big part of what is society. And I think the collectible space will not shy away from that. And look, there's a lot of excitement that's drawn in from these new cards that pop up. The debut patch, Michael Rubin came out and said this was the best invention in trading cards. A lot of people had some things to say about that. But they are not going to shy away from the one-of-ones and the debut patch type stuff and creating cool chase cards. Look, that's not a brand new thing though. If we look at Panini, they were doing the same thing. I guess the hope is that they continue to get creative and actually bring out really cool chase cards. I'm not going to argue that the debut patch card is not a great card. It is. It's a cool idea. You've got the patch that's right there on the player as they play the first game. Look, that's way better than what we had seen in recent years. And so there are efforts there to actually put out some really cool chase cards. And so if Topps continues to do that, they're not gonna shy away from the big hits, and products will probably continue to be more and more expensive because of those hits. And that is something that just modern hobbyists will have to accept. I'm one of them. It's a big reason why I'm not going out and buying hobby boxes. I'm not buying new product. I'm not buying into breaks because to me, it's just it's feeding the machine. I know what they're doing, and a lot of you all know what they're doing too, and that's fine. They're looking to sell that next product. Topps and Fanatics and the Paninis of the world, they are for-profit companies and they want to make money. And so they're allowed to set this thing up however they want. And Fanatics Fest here, the way that it was set up, the way that cards were being transacted, the way it was being portrayed, it was kind of feeding that machine. It was, look at the huge cards that are being sold. Look at Victor Wembanyama going out and buying a card. Look at Libby Dunn going and buying a card. And some were saying those weren't real transactions or they were set up. look, they have to set it up in some degree because there's an entourage. Like Livy Dunn walks around with 7 or 8 people with security and everything. She's not just walking around by herself. The video doesn't necessarily show that. When they show the kind of the highlight, when they show the clip, the YouTube short or the IG reel of Livy Dunn like talking to a dealer, it's not showing like the 10 people behind her to make sure that nobody gets close. But they're walking around as a group. So yes, the dealer knew she was walking up. There was not going to be like she just randomly walks up and then the dealer's going to fumble around and look for a card that she wants. I thought that the actual like negotiation thing, they could have done that better. I also just don't know like the acting part of it of, I think she said 2,200 and then he said, well, do you think that Paul Skeens is going to be a Hall of Famer? Which to me, what is she going to say to that? But then number 2, like, is okay, even if Paul Skeens is a Hall of Famer, does that mean that that's a good buy at 2,200 or 2,800 or 3,000 or whatever? Paul Skeens already has like a zillion cards. But anyway, I digress. I understand it's just it's a marketing piece. And then she countered at 2,850. I'm like, well, you couldn't have come in at 2,500? That guy would have sold you the card in real life for probably $1,000 just to have Livy Dunn on his social media or whatever, But all in all, this show was awesome. I mean, it was really good. And I was only there for 4.5 hours on Saturday. I wasn't there for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There was panels and stuff. I didn't feel like trying to fight crowds to be in the, the Dan Marino, the LeBron James, and those sorts of panels. And then I also think that they do replay those panels on YouTube later on or something or somewhere else. So I'm like, I can just catch that later on. We were trying to be really efficient with the time. I wanted to be able to really get around the exhibit floor and see it for all that it was. There's a lot of cool giveaways. There was a lot of Fanatics Fest exclusives people were chasing around. I met up with Neo, and Neo was there getting like a F1 box or, Topps boxes, different things that he had signed up for. So cool. A lot of people are all about those Fanatics Fest exclusives, or there's like the national exclusives. A lot of comparisons between the national and Fanatics Fest. These are complementary shows. They really are. I mean, the National is never going to be taken over by Fanatics Fest. I don't think that they want to do that. And frankly, I really hope that they don't do that unless the Javits Center's just got like another like 100,000 square feet somewhere and they can like use that for more tables and more sponsorships. I really like the mixed bag of the gigantic Dick's Sporting Goods setup. There's a huge Netflix installation talking about different sports shows and documentaries that they're doing. There was all sorts of things. I mean, it was really cool to be able to walk around. There's different reps from all these different companies. There was also trade nights. I didn't make it to them. Bleecker had a couple of different events. I wasn't able to make it to those because, again, my wife and there were there to just hang out and have kind of more of a date weekend and just walk the city and do our things. And then we just went there on Saturday for a few hours. But there was a lot of events around it. I thought it was really well done. People will say, $70 a ticket, that's a lot of money. I mean, I don't know. Disney tickets are like $120 now. $70 to go and potentially see athletes, meet athletes, be around it. I think that's pretty good access. I really don't think that it's overpriced. It's $70 a ticket. I understand that's, it's not $20 to go to a card show, $10 to go to a card show. This was not a card show in that way. But to be honest with you, the card show part of the show, I was really impressed with. They had good dealers there. The pricing wasn't terrible. Some of it was priced up a little bit, but yeah, that's why you negotiate. So I thought overall, this was just really well done. I was impressed. There was not, long lines to do much of anything. There was a lot of access there. I got to meet up with other content creators, other viewers, companies that I work with, and a couple of companies that I should be doing some more work with here soon. I'm excited about those opportunities. So I got the business networking with the viewer networking, with some of the content networking in about 4 hours on a Saturday. It was perfect. Whereas at the National, I'll be there for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I fly out Saturday, so it's a much longer piece. But there I'm actually, spending a lot of time looking at cards. There's some more of the networking events type stuff. But Fanatics Fest, if it's something to where you're nearby it, or if you can wrap it into kind of a long weekend where you're hanging out with your wife or just a family thing, I thought that it was really fun. And it sounded to me like from the people that went there last year coming in this year that it was a much improved show. Just they definitely tweaked some things. I don't have a lot of negative things to say other than if your expectations are that this is going to be a national type card show, then you'll be disappointed. And then also you just have to understand that there is a big focus on big money. There's big focus on the higher end at this particular show, which is interesting. My assumption here is that this is kind of like a top-down approach. Like, hey, we're going to show people that trading cards and this stuff is worth a lot of money. They had the Museum of Excellence downstairs, kind of hidden down there a little bit. But that was amazing. I mean, they had some incredible Jordan cards. They had a whole PMG, green PMG wall down there, including the Jordan. I'm assuming that Nat Turner's version was down there, the authentic altered. They had all the game used jerseys that Tom Brady had from his Super Bowls. They had a bunch of stuff. So when you look at this hobby as a whole, if you have Michael Rubin, you have Fanatics, you have Topps, I think Panini stays in the game. eBay is continuing to evolve. There's a lot of big companies that are reinvesting a lot of money in this space. This is not a space that's going away in my mind at all. And I think, and actually I know, there's price points for every hobbyist. Outside of new product pricing, singles, I mean, it's the world is your oyster in the singles market. Yeah, maybe if you want the 101 Black Finite Jaden Daniels, you're going to compete with the owner of the Commanders to buy it at $500,000 or whatever. But I mean, outside of those, like the 0.0001% of cards, there is a ton going on in this space. It really did open my eyes to, I think, some of the things that Topps Fanatics are trying to do and just how that compares to the average hobbyist, the average collector. And it is getting ready, from what I can see, for the next generation. You know, it is focused around kids, teenagers, and young adults. And I'm not one of those necessarily. Not saying that they're not, marketing to 45-year-olds, because I had a lot of fun there. But the focus is, we need that next generation of customer, and we also want them to have a great time and have access to athletes that we never had before, and they are delivering that. So it'll be interesting to see how this thing evolves. But Fanatics Fest 2025, it's a thumbs up, or what are what is it? What are the critics do? Two thumbs up. Rotten Tomatoes, 98%. It was a good show. It was a lot of fun. Friends, have an amazing day ahead. Stay healthy. Stay awesome. I'll talk to you again later.